Tonight, we drift out to sea. A warm Caribbean night, a slow song on the breeze, and a family vacation that should have ended with photos, stories, and a brand new puppy waiting at home. Instead, by sunrise, 23-year-old Amy Lynn Bradley is gone. No splash, no goodbye, just a silence that's lasted for decades. If you're new here, welcome to Sleepy Crime Stories. True cases told gently, at a pace you can exhale to. We take our time, we honor the people at the heart of these mysteries, and we leave space for stillness. Before we begin, a small favor. If you find comfort in this quiet corner of the internet, tap subscribe and like the video. It tells the algorithm to dim the lights, lower the volume, and bring more listeners a softer way to hear difficult stories. Also, I'd love to hear from you. Where are you watching from, and what time is it in your part of the world right now? It's always fascinating to see where everyone's tuning in from. Now, settle in and take a deep breath. This is the story of a family vacation that became a lifelong search, and the question that still echoes across quiet water. What happened to Amy Lynn Bradley? Let's begin. Imagine a warm Caribbean night aboard a gleaming cruise ship. The sea is calm, music drifts through the air, and 23-year-old Amy Lynn Bradley dances freely under the stars with new friends. It's a picture of carefree joy, but by sunrise, that picture shatters. Amy has vanished without a trace, and the tropical vacation has turned into a lingering nightmare. In this story, we will journey through the events of Amy Lynn Bradley's mysterious disappearance. It's a tale told in gentle detail, a slow, careful exploration of how an ordinary family vacation became an unsolved mystery spanning decades. Our tone is calm and reflective, guiding you through each moment and clue with measured care. Let's step back to the beginning of this journey to understand who Amy was and how she found herself on that fateful cruise. A family vacation at sea. The year is 1998, late March. Amy Lynn Bradley is a 23-year-old young woman from Virginia, brimming with life and plans for the future. She's a recent college graduate, athletic, outgoing, and responsible. Back home, Amy has just moved into her own apartment and is excited about starting a new job the following week. In fact, just a day before leaving on vacation, she adopted a little bulldog puppy named Daisy that she was supposed to pick up after returning from the trip. Amy's life is full of optimism, new home, new job, a beloved pet waiting. She has every reason to come back home safe. When Amy's father, Ron Bradley, wins an all-expenses-paid Caribbean cruise through his work, it feels like the perfect family getaway. Amy decides to join her parents, Ron and Iva, and her younger brother Brad on this spring break voyage. The cruise will take them through the sparkling Caribbean Sea with planned stops at tropical islands. Amy is excited to spend time with her family. Her brother Brad is 21 and just home from college, and they've always been close. Still, Amy has a few reservations. She has a fear of heights and isn't entirely comfortable with the idea of the vast open ocean and the towering cruise ship. Despite a bit of nervousness, Amy's excitement to be with her family on this adventure wins out. She puts aside her fears and boards the ship, hoping for a fun and relaxing vacation. On March 21st, 1998, the Bradley family boards the Royal Caribbean cruise ship Rhapsody of the Seas. The ship departs from San Juan, Puerto Rico, gliding out to sea under the bright sun. This is a grand vessel carrying over 2,000 passengers, with multiple decks, pools, restaurants, and a lively entertainment scene. For Amy, who loves taking photos, it's a dream to capture these memories. She even brought 15 rolls of film with plans to create a photo collage of the trip when she got home. In a postcard she writes to a friend from the first port of call. She happily notes that they're heading to Aruba next. Amy is truly embracing the vacation spirit, buying souvenirs for friends and soaking up each experience. The cruise's first stop is the island of Aruba, 2 days into the journey. The Bradley family enjoys their shore excursion there. On March 23, 1998, the ship leaves Aruba, setting sail overnight toward the next destination, Curaçao, a Dutch Caribbean island. The atmosphere on board that night is festive. No one has any idea of the tragedy that is about to unfold. The last night on board. On the night of March 23rd, Amy and her brother Brad dive into the ship's nightlife. There's a Mardi Gras themed party at the ship's dance club up on one of the top decks. Music pulses through the warm night air. Amy and Brad spend the evening dancing, laughing, and enjoying drinks with other passengers and some of the ship's crew. They're having a fantastic time. It's one of those carefree vacation nights that you remember fondly. A live band called Blue Orchid is performing at the club, giving the party an energetic vibe. Amy, who is outgoing and friendly, ends up socializing with members of the band. In particular, she dances several times with the band's bass player, a man nicknamed Yellow. His real name is Alistair Douglas. Fellow passengers and even the ship's videographer notice Amy on the dance floor that night. She's captured in some party footage, smiling and enjoying herself in the early hours of the morning. As the night wears on into the very early morning of March 24th, the crowd thins out. Brad decides to head back to their cabin a bit before his sister. According to the ship's electronic door log, Brad uses his key card to enter their family cabin around 3:35 a.m. Amy follows not long after. The key card system records her returning to the cabin just a few minutes later, at approximately 3:40 a.m. The Bradley family cabin is on the 8th deck, and it has a private balcony attached. Inside the cabin, the rest of the family is asleep. Brad and Amy, still a little wired from the night's excitement, step out to the balcony together for some fresh air and a quiet sibling chat before bed. The sea breeze is warm and gentle. The ship silently cuts through dark waters under a canopy of stars. Brad and Amy talk for a short while, reflecting on the fun they had that night. At some point, Brad decides he's tired and heads inside to sleep. Amy, however, stays out on the balcony a little longer. Perhaps she wanted a bit more time to enjoy the night air or to wind down after the party. No one knows exactly what Amy did during these last moments of her night, only that she remained on that balcony after her brother went to bed. Vanished at dawn. Around 5:30 a.m. on March 24th, as dawn's first light is creeping into the sky, Amy's father, Ron, stirs awake in the cabin. Parental instinct, perhaps. He gets up to check on his children. He steps over to the slightly ajar, sliding glass door of the balcony to see if Amy is there. Through the door, Ron can see Amy's lower body stretched out on a lounge chair on the balcony. She appears to be peacefully asleep in the early morning light, just as he expected. Relieved, Ron returns to bed himself, letting his daughter rest a bit longer in the fresh air. The ship is due to dock in Curaçao soon, and outside the horizon is brightening. Everything seems calm and normal. Roughly a half hour later, around 6 a.m., Ron wakes up again, perhaps fully this time, and that's when he senses something is off. He notices that the balcony door, which he remembered closing, is now partly open about a foot or so. Amy's lounge chair is empty. She is gone. At first, Ron doesn't panic. He has an odd, uneasy feeling, but tries to stay calm and logical. Maybe Amy woke up and decided to wander the ship's decks to watch the sunrise or get some coffee. It was unlike her to go somewhere without telling anyone, but there could be a simple explanation. Ron notices that Amy's flip-flops, sandals, are still in the room, as are her ID and shoes. but her cigarettes and lighter are missing. Amy was a smoker. Perhaps she went out for an early morning cigarette. Ron decides to go look for her around the ship, thinking he'll find her in one of the common areas or up on deck enjoying the morning air. Quietly, so as not to alarm Eva or Brad yet, Ron slips out of the cabin and begins searching. The cruise ship in the early morning is peaceful. A few crew members are preparing for the day, and some early rising passengers might be strolling about, but it's mostly still. Ron checks the places he thinks Amy might go, the deck areas, maybe the 24-hour cafe or snack bar, or even the ship's jogging track. As he moves through the ship, his unease grows. There's no sign of Amy anywhere. After some time searching on his own, with no luck, by now perhaps 6:30 a.m., Ron's worry turns to alarm. He returns to the cabin and wakes up his wife and son, urgently telling them that Amy is missing and he can't find her. The family immediately springs into action, anxiety mounting with each passing minute. They know Amy wouldn't just wander off without letting someone know. Something is wrong. Imagine the panic of being on a huge ship in the middle of the sea, realizing a loved one has simply disappeared. The Bradleys rush to alert the ship's crew. They find a staff member and explain that Amy is gone and ask for help. It's now early morning, and crucially, the ship is likely about to dock in Curaçao, or has just docked. The family's worst fear is that if Amy isn't found before passengers disembark, whoever might have Amy, if indeed something nefarious happened, could take her off the ship into the island, and she'd be impossible to find. Time is of the essence. The shipboard search and delays. Ron and Eva Bradley plead with the ship's crew to take immediate action. They request a ship-wide announcement about Amy's disappearance and ask the staff to seal the ship, effectively to prevent anyone from leaving until their daughter is found. This is every cruise line's nightmare scenario, but for the Bradleys it's simple. Their daughter was on the ship and now she isn't, so she must be somewhere on board or perhaps about to be taken off. They desperately want to stop the large crowd of passengers from just walking off at port in case Amy is being held or hidden among them. To the family's dismay, the response from the cruise staff is frustratingly slow and procedural. The crew at the purser's desk informs them that it's too early in the day to make a general announcement. Perhaps they are concerned about alarming other passengers or causing chaos just as the ship is arriving in port. Instead of an immediate alert, the staff suggests waiting until a more appropriate time in the morning to put out an announcement. The Bradleys continue to insist, panic growing by the minute, but the ship's officials hold off. No announcement is made as the first wave of passengers begins to disembark in Curaçao for the day's excursions. Imagine the agony the family feels watching people stream off the ship, knowing Amy could be among them in the wrong hands or being taken away somewhere beyond their reach. Finally, at 7:50 a.m., a full 2 hours after Amy was discovered missing, the crew makes a brief announcement over the loudspeaker. Will Amy Bradley please come to the purser's desk? By this time, unfortunately, hundreds of passengers have already left the ship for the day. If someone had abducted Amy and managed to get her off in those early moments, that window of opportunity was wide open. The announcement, in the family's view, comes far too late. As the morning progresses, the ship's security staff does conduct a search of the vessel. From approximately 12:15 p.m. to 1 p.m., crew members scour as many areas as they can, looking in cabins, storage rooms, anywhere a person might be. But the search yields nothing. There is no trace of Amy on board. It's as if she simply vanished into thin air. The Bradleys are beside themselves with fear and frustration. They feel the cruise line didn't act swiftly enough when every second counted. In interviews later, they would express deep anger toward certain crew officials. In particular, the cruise director, the staff member overseeing passenger activities. was perceived as disturbingly nonchalant. He reportedly told them things like, "Life goes on. We can't stop the whole cruise for one missing girl," which struck the family as callous and flippant. Such attitudes only added to the Bradleys' anguish. Not only is their daughter missing under mysterious circumstances, but they also feel the people in charge are not taking it seriously or showing empathy. Meanwhile, local authorities in Curaçao are alerted, and a search on shore begins as well in case Amy somehow disembarked. The ship's crew insists that all proper measures are being taken, but to the family it feels too little, too late. The Rhapsody of the Seas continues its scheduled route after Curaçao. It will sail onward to St. Martin and then St. Thomas in the coming days, but the Bradleys' world has stopped. They remain in Curaçao to work with investigators, refusing to simply continue on the pleasure cruise, as though nothing has happened. The cruise line assigns an attorney to be present, and by the next day, authorities from outside the ship are involved in the search. Investigations and suspicious clues. By March 25, 1998, the situation has escalated to involve multiple agencies. The FBI becomes involved in the case early on, given that an American citizen has gone missing in international waters. The Netherlands Antilles Coast Guard launches a coordinated search of the ocean around Curaçao, retracing the ship's route and checking the waters in case Amy somehow went overboard. For 4 days, 3 helicopters and a surveillance plane scour the waves, and boats search along the coastline. But they find nothing. No debris, no clothing, no sign of a body. Early in the investigation, some officials proposed that perhaps Amy fell overboard in an accident, or even that she might have taken her own life by jumping. These are not uncommon initial theories in cruise ship disappearances. However, Amy's family and friends immediately doubt these ideas. Amy was a trained lifeguard and a strong swimmer who loved water. If she had somehow fallen from the ship, there's a good chance she would have been able to stay afloat for some time, and likely someone would have heard a splash or seen something. Moreover, Amy was afraid of heights. Her family knew she was actually wary of being near the railings of the ship's decks. It seems highly unlikely that she would have been sitting on or climbing a railing where she could fall. And suicide? That idea seemed completely out of character. Amy had been excited about her life's next steps. She had even made concrete plans for after the cruise, like picking up her new puppy and starting her dream job. There was no indication she was depressed or suicidal. Quite the opposite. She was optimistic and happy on this trip. Investigators soon lean away from the accident theory, as no evidence supports it. There were no witnesses who saw someone fall overboard, and no physical evidence on the ship of such an event. With each passing day, the likelihood that Amy went into the sea diminishes, and the focus shifts to the far more unsettling possibility of foul play. As the FBI and local authorities interview people on the ship, some suspicious details emerge from that murky pre-dawn period when Amy went missing. A few fellow passengers recall something that, in hindsight, is chilling. They claim to have seen Amy in those early morning hours, between about 5:30 and 6 a.m., in the company of Alistair Yellow Douglas, the bass player from the band she'd been dancing with. According to their accounts, Amy and Yellow were seen together on one of the upper decks around dawn, possibly even taking an elevator together. One witness said they saw the musician hand Amy a drink with a dark liquid. Not exactly a normal sight at 5:30 in the morning. Another remembered seeing the two together and then noticing the man, Yellow, walking somewhere alone not long after, with Amy no longer with him. If these accounts are accurate, it would mean that after Amy left the cabin around 5:30, taking her cigarettes, she encountered or met up with this band member again on the ship. This is alarming to the Bradley family, because it suggests Amy did not simply slip off quietly for a smoke. She may have been with someone, perhaps someone she thought was a friend. The FBI promptly questions Alistair Yellow Douglas. They even administer a polygraph test to him. However, the polygraph results come back inconclusive, not clearly truthful, but not clearly deceptive either. Douglas maintains that he parted ways with Amy around 1 a.m. that night and went to bed, and he claims to know nothing about what happened to her after that. He says he was woken around 6 a.m. by ship personnel who came to search his cabin, which lines up time-wise with when the family raised the alarm. Despite Douglas's denials, Amy's brother Brad has a troubling memory. Brad recalls crossing paths with Yellow not long after Amy went missing, perhaps while frantically searching the decks that morning, and Douglas said to him casually, "Hey man, I'm sorry to hear about your sister." At that moment, no public announcements had been made, and only a handful of people should have known Amy was missing. Why was this man aware something had happened to Brad's sister so soon? The timing felt off and highly suspicious to Brad. To him, it seemed as if the bassist was pretending to be sympathetic, but actually might have been trying to gauge the family's reaction or divert suspicion. The band member isn't the only suspicious figure that night. Eva Bradley, Amy's mother, later remembered another unsettling detail from the evening before Amy disappeared. While the family was out enjoying the ship's events, a waiter who had interacted with them was acting strangely. This waiter apparently knew Amy by name, perhaps from serving their table earlier, and at one point asked Eva's help to invite Amy to go with him to the ship's disco after hours, or to go ashore together at the next port. He even gave Iva a note to pass to Amy, expressing his interest in meeting up with her. The Bradleys found this behavior a bit creepy. Why was a crew member so forwardly pursuing a passenger, even involving her mother? Amy herself was put off by it, referring to the waiter as pretty pushy or creepy. She had no intention of meeting that crew member later. In hindsight, that incident stands out. Could it be that Amy was being targeted by someone on board? There's yet another odd clue. On cruise ships, photographers often take pictures of guests during events and display them for purchase. The night before, many photos had been snapped of passengers at dinner and at the Mardi Gras party. The Bradleys recall seeing photos of Amy among those on display, and one crew photographer even later confirmed that he remembers printing pictures that included Amy. But when Iva went to the photo gallery to actually collect or view the pictures of their family, Amy's photos were missing. It was as if someone had gone through the display and removed all images of Amy. If true, that is a deeply disturbing sign. It could indicate that someone intentionally removed her photos, perhaps to prevent her from being identified or remembered by staff and other passengers after she vanished. Who would do that, and why? All of these pieces, the overly interested waiter, the band members' strange behavior, the missing photos, point toward an unsettling possibility. Amy may have been deliberately targeted for abduction. The late 90s saw a rising awareness of criminal networks in the Caribbean engaging in illegal activities like human trafficking. The idea that a young woman could be snatched off a cruise ship might sound like a movie plot. But Amy's case raised the question, could someone have orchestrated taking her off the ship to be sold or exploited? The Bradley family increasingly believed that somebody has her, or somebody threw her off that ship. In other words, foul play was almost certain in their minds. Despite these suspicions, the official investigation yields no concrete proof of what happened to Amy on board. No arrests are made. The cruise line, facing scrutiny, insists it acted responsibly. The Bradleys would eventually file a lawsuit against Royal Caribbean for failing to secure the ship promptly, though the company maintained it followed proper procedures. After days of fruitless searching on the ship and at sea, the physical hunt for Amy winds down, but for her family, the search is only beginning. If Amy was taken, where did she go? Over the years that followed, A series of haunting clues and reported sightings would suggest that Amy Lynn Bradley might still be alive somewhere, desperately hoping to come home. Unconfirmed sightings and new clues. In the immediate aftermath of Amy's disappearance, the Bradleys remained in Curaçao, handing out flyers with Amy's photo, speaking with locals, and chasing any lead they could. Astonishingly, within days of her vanishing, a possible eyewitness comes forward. A local taxi driver approaches the family and claims that, on the morning of March 24th, the very morning Amy went missing, he saw a young woman matching her description frantically running in the port area. He said the woman seemed distressed and was asking for a phone, as if she urgently needed to make a call. The detail that struck him was her distinctive green eyes. Amy had bright green eyes, which were highlighted on the missing person posters. The Bradleys are stunned. Could Amy have escaped from something and tried to reach out for help, only to disappear again? Unfortunately, this taxi driver's account, while tantalizing, could never be confirmed. It remained an unverified piece of the puzzle, one more maybe in a sea of questions. A few months later, in August 1998, another startling report surfaces. Two Canadian tourists, both experienced scuba divers, contact authorities with a story. They had been diving at a popular beach on Curaçao called Playa Porto Marie when they spotted something highly unusual. They saw a young woman on the beach who caught their attention because she seemed disoriented or out of place, and she was accompanied by two aggressive-looking men. What made their hearts jump was that the woman had tattoos that they clearly recognized from Amy's missing posters. Tattoos exactly like Amy's. Amy had several distinctive tattoos: a Tasmanian devil cartoon spinning a basketball on her shoulder, a nod to her love of basketball, a sun with rays on her lower back, a Chinese symbol on her right ankle, and a green gecko lizard around her navel, belly button, along with a navel ring. These were not common tattoos. Anyone who saw the posters or news about her case could recall them. The Canadian divers noticed, for instance, the Tasmanian devil tattoo on the woman's shoulder, and it immediately rang bells. One of the divers, a man named David Carmichael, later described the encounter in detail. He said the woman looked just like Amy, and even seemed about to approach him when she overheard him speaking English to his friend. It was as if hearing a familiar language almost prompted her to act, perhaps to call out for help. But before she could, one of the men with her, who Carmichael said resembled that bass player Yellow, stepped in, gave her a harsh look or a signal, and shepherded her away. Carmichael recalled that the woman would glance at him and then cast her eyes down, almost like she was trying to signal distress without alerting her captors. It was a brief, chilling moment. At the time, the divers did not know about Amy Bradley's case. It was only later, when Carmichael happened to see Amy's story featured on the TV show America's Most Wanted, that he realized who he believed he had seen. The encounter haunted him. He was convinced the woman on that beach was Amy, alive and under duress. He even personally phoned Amy's father, Ron, and then flew to Virginia to discuss it with the family. The FBI took this report seriously enough to investigate, but when agents combed the Curaçao beach area for evidence, nothing concrete turned up. No one could locate the mysterious men or confirm that the woman was indeed Amy. Still, the report further convinced the Bradleys that Amy had been kidnapped and was possibly being held in the Caribbean. The following year, in January 1999, another witness came forward, one whose account would become one of the most harrowing. Bill Wilhelm Hefner, a U.S. Navy petty officer, had been stationed on the nearby island of Curaçao in the late 90s. He reported that one night in early 1999, he and some fellow sailors visited a local brothel, a place he was technically not supposed to be, given military rules. In that dimly lit bar, a young Caucasian woman approached him. She was anxious and begged for his help. She told him her name, Amy Bradley. Hefner would recall that she was desperately trying to convey something to him, telling him she was being held against her will, and that she needed help to escape. She mentioned that she had been on a cruise ship, stepped off it for a moment, perhaps mentioning trying to get drugs or something as he recalled, and then had been trapped by the people who now ran this establishment. This sailor was caught off guard and uncertain how to react. As he listened, two men at the bar seemed to be watching, and soon they intervened. They pulled the frightened woman aside and told her to go upstairs, effectively ending the encounter. Hefner was left in a state of shock and worry. He believed the woman truly was the missing Amy Bradley, and that she was in grave danger. But fearing repercussions for being in a prohibited place, he kept the incident to himself at first. Only after he retired from the Navy in 2002, a few years later, did his conscience push him to act. He reached out to Amy's family and told them the story, apologizing for not coming forward sooner. The Bradleys, while devastated by the content of his account, were grateful to finally hear it. It added a crucial piece to the dark picture they suspected. The FBI investigated Hefner's story as well. By the time they looked into it, the brothel he named, a well-known establishment in Curaçao's capital, had been burned down, possibly an unrelated incident, possibly not. There were no records or evidence left to verify his encounter. If Amy had been there, she and those holding her had long since moved on. Still, Hefner's account aligns eerily with the idea that Amy was ensnared in a human trafficking ring, forced into sexual exploitation. The detail that she directly pleaded, "My name is Amy Bradley, please help me," paints a heartbreaking image of a young woman who had not given up hope and was actively seeking rescue, if only someone could act in time. The years continued to pass, but leads kept trickling in. In March 2003, a bizarre tip came from thousands of miles away in the United States. A witness reported possibly seeing a woman resembling Amy in a restaurant in Barbados, of all places, accompanied by several men. Barbados is another Caribbean island, albeit far from Curaçao. According to this account, when the woman realized she might have been recognized, the men quickly whisked her away in a car, giving only a fleeting chance for identification. Even more startling was an incident later that same year, 2003, in the city of San Francisco, California. Yes, on the U.S. mainland. Two women who had been familiar with Amy's case through media reports swore they saw her in person in San Francisco's busy Union Square area. The sighting took place near a street musician's performance, drawing a small crowd. These witnesses said they saw a woman who looked like Amy watching the performer, but she was not alone. Two men were closely accompanying her. The women were sure it was Amy. Something about her face and demeanor struck them instantly. One of them even tried to call out Amy's name. At that moment, the two men seemed to realize the attention and, in an almost rehearsed fashion, grabbed the woman and hurried her away, disappearing into the city streets. The witnesses described that as the woman was led off, she cast them a pleading, desperate look, as if to say, "Help me," with her eyes. But she was quickly forced out of sight. They were so certain about what they saw that they contacted the authorities. The FBI considered this lead significant enough to create composite sketches of the unidentified men seen with the woman. If this was truly Amy in San Francisco 5 years after her disappearance, it suggests she might have been trafficked out of the Caribbean and possibly moved around, even back into the U.S. However, like many of the other sightings, this one could not be conclusively verified. It remained an enigma. Was it Amy, or just someone who resembled her? No solid evidence could be gathered beyond the eyewitness accounts. Then came 2005, a year that brought both potential breakthrough evidence and crushing false hope for the Bradley family. In the spring of 2005, a woman named Judy Moorer was vacationing in Bridgetown, Barbados. While using a restroom in a local department store, Judy had a chilling encounter. A group of men entered the restroom with a younger woman, roughly pushing the woman inside. Judy stayed quiet, listening from inside a stall, as the men gave orders to this frightened-looking woman. They mentioned something about a deal happening soon and not being late. Judy felt uneasy. After the men stepped outside briefly, perhaps waiting by the door, Judy emerged and saw the woman at the sink. The woman was anxious, shaken. Judy gently tried to talk to her. She asked her name. The woman, looking terrified and trying to speak softly, replied that her name was Amy and that she was from Virginia. Before Judy could gather more information or do anything, the men re-entered and hurried the woman away. Deeply disturbed, Judy later reported this to authorities. Given Amy Bradley's known Virginia roots and missing status, this seemed like more than coincidence. Law enforcement had Judy work with a sketch artist to draw composites of the men and even the woman she saw. Again, however, by the time these leads were chased, the trail in Barbados had gone cold. Around the same time, 2005 delivered another jarring development: photographic evidence that raised hopes and questions. The Bradley family received an anonymous tip, directing them to an image on a website that advertised escorts and sex workers in the Caribbean. The tipster thought one of the women on the site resembled Amy. Investigators obtained 2 photographs from this website of a scantily clad young woman who indeed bore a striking resemblance to Amy Lynn Bradley. In these images, the woman has a look in her eyes described as distraught and despondent. She was being advertised under the name Jazz. When the Bradleys saw the photos, they were stunned. The resemblance in facial structure and features was uncanny, albeit the woman in the photo looked older and had heavy makeup. Could this be Amy, 7 years after her disappearance, forced into a life of sexual slavery? The FBI conducted a forensic analysis of the images. Unfortunately, given the technology of the time and the nature of online images, the results were inconclusive. They could not definitively prove the woman was Amy, nor could they rule it out, especially if the photos had been digitally altered. However, one independent expert, who later examined the photos using facial recognition techniques, believed strongly that it was Amy. The case was even featured on an episode of The Doctor, Phil's show in late 2005, where the photos were shown publicly for the first time. Seeing those pictures on national television, viewers and experts alike were chilled by the possibility that Amy had been alive all those years in captivity, her image hiding in plain sight on an illicit website. But without a location or further information from the anonymous tip, authorities hit a dead end in tracking Jazz. It was another agonizing maybe. The cumulative weight of these sightings and clues was both a blessing and a curse for Amy's family. On one hand, they provided hope that Amy was still alive out there, that she hadn't drowned on that night in 1998, that perhaps someday they could find her and bring her home. On the other hand, each new account painted a picture of Amy in distress, trapped in terrifying situations, just out of reach of rescue. The uncertainty and horror of imagining what she might be enduring was almost too much to bear. The leads were so scattered: Curaçao, Barbados, California. It was like chasing shadows around the world. In the midst of these developments, there were also cruel setbacks. Perhaps the most heartless was a scam perpetrated against the Bradleys in the year after Amy vanished. In 1999, a man named Frank Jones contacted the family claiming he was a former U.S. Army Special Forces soldier. He said he and his team of ex-commandos were private investigators who had evidence Amy was being held by traffickers in a compound in Colombia, guarded by armed men. Jones fed the Bradleys elaborate stories over many months, even citing details such as specific tattoos and personal lullabies to earn their trust. leading them to believe his team had actually seen Amy alive. He offered hope he could rescue their daughter for a price. Desperate and emotionally raw, the Bradleys paid Jones and his team a substantial sum of money over time, over $200,000, to fund the rescue operation. Finally, Jones told them a raid would take place on a certain day, and that they should await news. That day came and went with no call. It turned out to be a fraud. There was no team, no compound, and Jones had cruelly deceived a grieving family for money. In 2002, authorities caught up with Frank Jones. He was charged and eventually pled guilty to mail fraud, serving a 5-year prison sentence. The Bradleys were devastated not just financially, but emotionally. To have been given false hope and then nothing, it was an unimaginable betrayal. This episode highlighted the vulnerability of families of missing persons and the depths to which unscrupulous individuals can sink. As the years wore on into the late 2000s, no definitive answers emerged. The case periodically made news, especially when other high-profile disappearances occurred at sea. For example, when Natalie Holloway, an American teen, vanished in Aruba in 2005, media attention also drifted back to Amy's case, drawing parallels about missing young women in the Caribbean. Amy's story was featured on true crime TV shows like America's Most Wanted, Unsolved Mysteries, and the documentary series Disappeared. Each time the story aired, new tips would come in, but none led to a resolution. In 2010, 12 long years after Amy's disappearance, there was a somber administrative milestone. Amy Lynn Bradley was declared legally dead by the state of Virginia. This is a common legal step for someone who has been missing for so long without confirmed life signs, and it allows families to deal with certain legal matters like estates or insurance. For Amy's parents, it was a formality they had to endure, but it did not mean they truly believed Amy was gone forever. In their hearts, they still hoped she was alive. Interestingly, around that same year, a curious discovery made headlines that briefly stirred speculation. A human jawbone washed ashore on a beach in Aruba. Given Aruba's proximity to Curaçao and that it was part of the Bradleys' cruise itinerary, some wondered if this bone could belong to Amy or to Natalie Holloway, who had vanished 5 years after Amy. Initial tests showed it did not match Natalie's dental records. There was never a conclusive test to compare it to Amy's, and the bone was determined to likely come from a Caucasian adult woman. Without further evidence, that eerie find remains another unanswered question, most likely unrelated, but one can never know for sure. Despite the lack of closure, Amy's family has never stopped searching. Over the years, rewards have been offered to entice anyone with information to come forward. The FBI has a standing reward of $25,000 for credible information leading to Amy's recovery, or the conviction of those responsible for her disappearance. The Bradley family themselves at one point offered a significant reward, up to $250,000, for Amy's safe return, and $50,000 for just information on her whereabouts. These offers underscore how serious and committed the search for Amy has been. But heartbreakingly, those rewards have gone unclaimed. Enduring hope and a continuing mystery. It has now been over 2 decades since Amy Lynn Bradley boarded that cruise ship and vanished. For most families, such a tragedy might mean years of grieving, and perhaps eventually a memorial or acceptance of loss. But the Bradleys have held on to something else, hope. A hope that refuses to extinguish, kept alive by the flickers of possible sightings and by their own unwavering love for Amy. Ron and Iva Bradley, along with Amy's brother Brad, have tried to continue living their lives. But they carry this heavy burden every single day. They commemorate Amy's birthday every year, imagining what she'd be like in her 30s, then 40s. They keep her belongings, her memories, close. Amy's father even keeps her beloved car, carefully maintained, in the garage, ready for the day she might need it again. In a testament to their hope, the family maintains a website dedicated to finding Amy. On this site, they share updates, memories, and photographs of Amy through the years, trying to keep her face in the public eye. Intriguingly, they notice something peculiar about the site's visitor logs. Around meaningful dates, Amy's birthday for instance, or the anniversary of her disappearance, there would occasionally be a spike of visits from certain locations. Specifically, they detected recurring hits from IP addresses in Curaçao and Barbados around those special days. Even more intriguing, whoever was visiting from those locations would stay on the site for a long time, sometimes 30 to 45 minutes, possibly poring over family photos and updates. Could it be Amy herself, secretly checking the website to feel a connection with home? Or perhaps someone close to her, or tragically, those who might be holding her, monitoring what the family knows. There's no way to trace the exact source of these visits. They came from internet providers outside U.S. jurisdiction, making it impossible for the FBI to dig further. But the Bradleys take them as a hopeful sign. Brad once said that if by chance Amy is able to access the internet, they want her to see that they haven't given up. In case she happens to be able to look at it, hopefully she would know that we're still trying and still thinking about her. Amy's mother, Iva, has her own daily ritual of hope and prayer. Every morning when she wakes up, her very first thought is, maybe today will be the day there's a breakthrough, the phone call with good news, the tip that pans out, the miracle they've been waiting for. And each night, before bed, Iva and Ron tell each other, maybe tomorrow we'll finally have answers, maybe tomorrow Amy will come back to us. It's like a mantra that keeps them going, day by day, year by year. It's hard to imagine the strength required to sustain that hope for so long, but for the Bradleys, the alternative, giving up, is unthinkable. As Brad once explained, the not knowing, as painful as it is, at least allows them to believe Amy could still come home. The lack of closure allows us to continue to hope, he said. I prefer it that way than the finality of knowing she's gone for sure. The world, too, hasn't forgotten Amy Lynn Bradley. Her story continues to captivate and haunt those who hear it. True crime enthusiasts discuss theories on internet forums and social media, occasionally breathing new life into old clues. The case has been covered on numerous podcasts and TV specials, each examining the mystery from different angles. But it was in 2025 that Amy's disappearance gained perhaps its widest audience yet. A 3-part Netflix documentary series titled Amy Bradley is Missing. Released on a global streaming platform, this series delved deeply into the evidence, the family's journey, and even confronted some of the people connected to the case. In the Netflix documentary, viewers see interviews with Ron, Iva, and Brad Bradley, who recount the events and their feelings in their own calm, heartfelt words. Investigators from the FBI share what they can about the case, underscoring how perplexing it remains. The filmmakers also speak to witnesses like David Carmichael, the Canadian diver, and Bill Hefner, the former Navy officer, giving them a chance to describe on camera what they saw and why they believe it was Amy. Hearing and seeing these witnesses adds weight to their accounts. It's clear they are sincere, ordinary people who stumbled into something extraordinary and have been affected by it ever since. One of the more dramatic moments in the documentary involves Alistair "Yellow" Douglas, the bass player from the cruise ship. While he declined to be formally interviewed on camera, the filmmakers did speak extensively with his daughter, who shared some revealing insights. She described how when her father returned home from that 1998 cruise, something about him changed. He became more distant, and she later discovered a hidden stash of photographs of women, none of whom were her mother, in his belongings, which struck her as odd. This raised her own suspicions that her father might know more about Amy's disappearance than he let on. In a tense scene, the documentary records this daughter actually calling her father on the phone to confront him about Amy's case while the cameras rolled. During that call, Alistair Douglas became agitated and defensive. He insisted, "I didn't do anything wrong. All I did was dance with her," and when pressed about whether he might have met Amy again later or been on a beach in Curaçao with her, he flatly denied it, saying he never even likes to go to beaches. His tone on the call was angry and uncomfortable. It wasn't a confession or any kind of proof of guilt, but viewers could sense the strain. A man who was once a person of interest being confronted by his own child about a long lingering mystery. It added yet another human layer to this complex story, albeit without providing any clear answers. Another figure who drew outrage in the documentary was the cruise director from the Rhapsody of the Seas, who appeared in interviews. He reiterated his stance that the crew did nothing wrong and that Amy likely fell overboard, a theory the family strongly rejects. His seemingly indifferent remarks, like saying cruises go on, life goes on, struck many viewers as incredibly insensitive. The Bradley family wasn't surprised. They had experienced that lack of empathy firsthand in 1998. But seeing it again publicly stirred anger among those watching, and the cruise line's handling of the situation came under renewed criticism. The implication is clear. More could have been done, and perhaps if the ship had been locked down immediately, the outcome might have been different. As the documentary shows, raising awareness can sometimes shake loose new information. The filmmakers expressed hope that by sharing Amy's story on such a large platform, someone out there with a crucial piece of information might finally be reached. Someone who perhaps didn't even realize they knew something important. In fact, since the documentary's release and the resulting spike of public interest, there have been new tips and calls reported to the family and the FBI. Online communities have buzzed with theories, and a fresh spotlight is shining on a case that had long gone cold. To further incentivize answers, a notable public figure, podcast host Ethan Klein, announced in mid-2025 that he is personally offering a $1 million reward for information that leads to Amy's safe return. This extraordinary sum underscores how much the case has touched people and how desperate everyone is to see it resolved. It's one of the largest private rewards ever associated with a missing person case, showing that even after all these years, Amy's story has an impact and there are those willing to contribute significantly to find the truth. Yet, as of today, Amy Lynn Bradley remains missing. The case is officially still open. The FBI continues to encourage anyone with information to come forward, no matter how small or far-fetched it may seem. Amy would be in her early 50s now. It's hard to picture that since, in our minds, she is forever 23, frozen in time as the vibrant young woman smiling in her vacation photos. But her family imagines what she might look like as the years progress. They've even had age-progressed sketches made to aid in identification. They will not let the world forget her face. In quiet moments, the Bradleys hold on to the belief that Amy is out there, perhaps checking that website to see family photos, or dreaming of her puppy Daisy she never got to raise, or recalling the lyrics of the lullaby her mom used to sing. Maybe she's waiting for a chance, a small window to break free and contact them. Or maybe, and this is a reality they also acknowledge, maybe she's gone and they will never know exactly how or why. It's the uncertainty that is both torture and lifeline. As we close this story, picture a home in Virginia where Amy's bedroom still holds her treasured things, where her car still sits ready in the garage. Picture her parents, now in their senior years, saying goodnight to each other with the words, maybe tomorrow, keeping that spark of hope alive. And picture Amy, not as a victim, but as a beloved daughter and sister, somewhere under the same sky, perhaps looking at the moon and hoping her family hasn't forgotten her. The final scene of the Netflix documentary is especially poignant. It shows a home video clip of Amy as a child, giving her mom a kiss on the cheek, a tender, everyday moment now filled with so much meaning. Amy's mother Iva then faces the camera, tears in her eyes, and makes a direct plea. If you know something, please just give us that one thing that we need. Please do that for us, and do that for Amy. In that gentle voice, in those simple words, lies the enduring heart of this story. A family's unyielding love and a hope that refuses to die. Amy Lynn Bradley is still missing, but her story is very much alive, inspiring strangers around the world to keep searching, keep sharing her name, and never lose faith that someday the mystery will be solved and Amy will come home.